But the thing is, when I'm on set for Your Friends and Neighbors, I can't teach you how to get into college. I gotta be an actor right now. But I don't think that I want the kind of life that, you know, I'm gonna work this thing until I get that other job, and once I get that other job, I'm leaving this thing and I don't wanna do it anymore because I've always wanted this other thing. It's like, no, everything I'm doing right now, and I'm lucky to say this, everything I'm doing, I love, and I think is a part of my life, but everything, you for me not to choose a basket, I have to be incredibly careful that I only have 2 arms.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Hassiem Muhammad, and you are listening to The Actor's Instrument, Tools for the Long Game. Before we dive in, y'all know the drill. Please hit that like button and that subscribe, especially. This lets us know the content is resonating with all of you. So please take care of that for me right now. Appreciate it. Y'all, I started this podcast almost 3 years ago, which is crazy to think about. And I've had some really incredible guests on the show. And since that time, those incredible guests have been up to more incredible things. So this week on The Actor's Instrument, we are joined by a now recurring guest on the podcast from season 2, Matias De La Flor, to see what he's been up to since his last appearance on The Actor's Instrument. Matias De La Flor is an artist based in New York City who made his Broadway debut in Camelot at Lincoln Center. He has since appeared in Law and Order SVU and has an upcoming recurring role on season 2 of Your Friends and Neighbors on Apple TV. He has also appeared in regional theater productions such as Les Mis at the Muni and Titanic at Ogunquit Playhouse. Matias, welcome back, bro.
Hassiem, my guy, it's so good to see you. Incredible that you're on season 5 or taking it back to season 2.
It is
Incredible.
crazy because I was like looking back at our first conversation because I was like, okay, let me, I'd love to bring back some questions to see
Yeah.
maybe, how you're in a different place from then. And I was like, yo, guys, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, you got to go back and check out this first episode. My setup was busted. Like the lighting was terrible. I was using a crappy webcam. I didn't have this DSLR yet. Um, so I know that if this show has grown that much, that you know, not just as an artist, but as a person, have likely grown a lot as well. So
Oh, thank you, brother. I mean, it's been wonderful to see how the show has continued to evolve as our careers do, and I think it's a really great, uh, sort of organization that you're establishing of like, let's talk about what it takes to build your instrument, to be doing this for the long haul, much more than, and we talked about that early on, like much more than just like the dream of what it is to be in this industry, but like the reality of what it is.
100%, 100%, because you know anybody theoretically, you can do one really awesome gig, but ultimately there are some people. I remember one of our teachers in school. So, guys, if you haven't heard the original episode, Matthias and I went to UNCSA, North Carolina School of the Arts, and one of our professors there, Quinn Gordon, I remember him saying, there are some actors who work like all of the places once, right? Like maybe they do a Broadway show, and maybe they do a thing on TV, and maybe a play at this, playhouse. They work with this producer one time. He's like, and then you have the actors who work a few places many times over. And he's like, you want to be that second actor who
Mm.
people want to
Mm.
keep bringing back. And you just made me think of that moment, talking about how we build sustainability, how we stay in it for the long haul. And yeah, if you do the one Broadway show, like you did, like freaking amazing. Most actors don't, but one Broadway show does not a career make, you know?
No, I think, what I learned being on Broadway was that like it is a moment. It is a great moment. And, you should enjoy it and revel in it and, track your progress to how you got there and what it means to you. And it is a spiritual thing. It can be, you know, but, Andre de Shields, right? Like the top of one mountain is the bottom of the next. And that's a great thing too. I think the thing that I learned, because it happened to me pretty early on in my time in New York, you know, I I went from seeing it as the foundation of my life here as from then to a beautiful memory that set a lot of precedent in my career, and the space between those 2 worlds is broad. Like it wasn't an easy thing to learn necessarily, but in hindsight, it's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful moment, and without it, I wouldn't be the kind of artist I am today. It's just not what you think. I think that there's this preconceived notion of like, oh, like if you get out of school and you get a TV show, you get a Broadway show, like you stay in that pocket, you do that day, boom, 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 back to back to back. And like maybe, but maybe that's not even what you want. Like that's not what I wanted. I just didn't know what I wanted, but what I wanted was to be an artist. It was to be creatively involved with multiple different people, organizations, mediums, forms to just continue being curious about this thing we do, which is what we did at school and what got us into it in the first place, that first like spark of creativity. Uh, so it's interesting that now, when you look back at that, wonderful Lincoln Center experience, it's like, yo, I'm so glad I did that. And and I'm also glad that like, I was having meetings back then that I probably shouldn't have been having because I didn't have the bandwidth and understanding of what this career was, of what it took to make theater, let's say, but I had access to those opportunities. So I think there's always 2 sides to something. It's after the fact that you learn, not even during sometimes.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. And I've had other guests on the show speak about like, being ill equipped for how quickly success can take you into certain rooms, and
Yeah,
all of a sudden,
yeah.
for example, Michael Silverblatt was on the show and he was talking about like his showcase went so well at a college. He was like, I don't know how to meet with these agents and managers.
But yeah, I mean,
It's like,
no one knows, there is no knowing. There is, like, the acceptance of whatever is gonna happen in the moment, and I think that there's certain things you can control. Like, I can control how I show up to something, how prepared I am, how relaxed I am, what I did before, what I do after. Carl Forsman at UNCSA always used to say, like, you need to go after every single audition and do something nice for yourself, go celebrate, even if that's just taking a walk in the park. Not everything is a huge steak afterwards or anything. You know what I mean? Like, not everything has, to be celebratory doesn't mean you have to go, and do all that, but like do something for yourself that says, yo, I did this. I came in today, and it's not about the result. It's about me continuously showing up and trying to learn something. And then those opportunities end up stacking anyway. And the thing that's right for you is the thing. It's just how you get there that can either be difficult and pleasurable or difficult and awful. I think.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago, that there's a perception of you do this one big gig and then it's just back to back. And the last time you were on the show, we kind of touched on the fact that you booked Camelot really soon out of college.
Mhm,
And for most actors, we talk about how much we hear no in our careers. And at the time, you hadn't heard no much because you heard a pretty big yes early on. Like, for example, like I booked my first gig like a couple months out of school. It wasn't a big thing. It was a small part in an indie feature that had a star attached. So it felt special, but like it wasn't a big job. It wasn't until like 6 months out of school that I got my first equity gig as well as my first TV gig. So I probably had like at that time 50 or 60 no's under my belt. How has it been post Camelot? And I'm assuming there has been more no's since that time. And like, how
mhm.
have you managed those feelings after having been at what some people would consider the top of the mountain?
I mean, it's a great question because like the no's were like somehow they changed. They were because, they were all, I auditioned quite a bit before getting the Camelot workshop. I was really lucky that my reps were, like, just really pushing me in all these different directions, and I was learning from all of, like, these great auditions, these botched auditions, like, my first New York City callback that I flew in for was a complete disaster. Like, it was not a good experience. I was fine until I was incredibly nervous, and I totally blanked, and a complete disaster. It was that for an actor's nightmare. But then I literally all I learned was, okay, homie, when you walk in a room, make sure that you're present enough to hear the people behind the table what their names are. Like, if you can't hear the person that's letting you in presenting, the director and the producer, then you're not there. So just don't do that again. Just go into the room, breathe, and then say the name, repeat the name of the person you're being introduced back to them so that I stay present. And I was like, I'm gonna do that next time. And the next one was Camelot. So I just like applied that, and then I was much more comfortable in the room, thus being able to do my, my best work. Um, so that was, an interesting way. I think we turn no's into yeses in that way. But post Camelot, I was getting no's for dope projects, so I was happy to be involved. Like, I got sent like Stephen Sondheim's last musical, and I was like, "There's no way I'm auditioning for this right now," but I am. And then I didn't get it, but I saw it 3 times, and I loved it, and I noticed what the industry was asking of me, and in the ways that I was delivering and wasn't delivering that. So then it was back to me to like put that into my training regimen, right? To be like, all right, I would put myself in boot camps. If I heard Evita was gonna go from ART to Broadway, that was a very big rumor. Like months after I was finishing up Camelot, I was like, all right, I'm waking up every morning and I'm singing "Oh What a Circus" and doing jumping jacks and then doing burpees and doing this and like singing the score through that lens, right? So that when that audition comes, I can be prepared. That audition never came, so that was a proverbial no, even though because it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So I think if it's all the same, nothing belongs to you. It's just like I think so I stopped really kind of seeing it that way. But then there are the projects that come to you that you do care about, that you like, that you're passionate about, that are infectious, that you get callbacks for, that you get close to, that are its own little version of grief.
Mm.
But I think grief is beautiful because you are alive and you're experiencing what it is to fall in love in 5 days with something and see a whole version of your life that could be if that were to be your reality. It's like it's crazy to think that we don't think that way as artists. Like we do. It's like, oh yeah, like if that producer just says yes and they cast me in this TV show, I move to LA or I move to Montreal for 3 months, right? And my life changes, right? Like, yeah, it's definitely something that's present. It just can't be the ruler of your action, right? And that's what I realized in that first catastrophic callback where I wasn't present, right?
Yeah.
Because I was so caught up in the idea of, oh, I'm just out of school and Broadway is validating me right now. They're saying that I can do this, right? So I let that image get too big, and then I learned how to just contain that a little more and let it feed me instead of
Mhm.
drag me down.
What a beautiful way, as you said, to turn no's into yeses and to be so mature, um, at a young age, relative young age. You're a few years younger than me at least, and to have that maturity so early in your career because man, that disastrous audition, like sometimes that ends careers. Sometimes, especially like
Yeah.
young people, what I'm saying? Like you come to New York or you go to LA and like you find up here in this
Yeah.
big room and you fall on your face and you're like, I'm out. So
Good. No, I called my agent. I was like, "No, man, like, I can't do this. Like, that's crazy. This is like Jim Carnahan and Jerry Mitchell. Like, they know people. Like, what am I doing?" And then he was like, "Matias, this happens to Tony winners. I don't know what you're on about. Just relax. Go get a drink. It happens." And I'm like, "No, you're wrong. You that have been working in the business for 30 years, you're wrong. You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm done. I'm through." I go get a drink. I'm fine. I get the next audition the next day.
yeah.
Like that's the way it goes. And thank God.
No, absolutely.
There's
Now, okay, so something else I know about you is that, like me, you like to stay busy.
yeah.
And the last time we chatted on the show, you had a play that was very early in the developmental process. Got any updates for us?
Well, it is the great thing about that question is that I have no idea what play you're talking about right now because there's a couple on my plate, and I'm really happy that throughout this entire like post Camelot process of like literally just like gathering my artistic sort of forces and like resources in the city, so much has been about the creation of work, and that's how I always feel the most authentic as myself doing this playing this game that we play because the commercial game is dope and I love it and it's great, but it's not where my soul lives. There are times for the soul to fly in that game, but I love being in a black box in Midtown with my friends creating a thing that we didn't know what it was gonna be, and then all of a sudden, it's bigger than you, and you have to go through with it. It's like religion, it's calling, it's something deeper than any sort of goal, that you can set for yourself. It's like church, I've been developing this project that's really special to me, because it's the first Hispanic play that I was ever a part of as an actor when I was at community college at Florida School of the Arts. It's this Federico Garcia Lorca play called Blood Wedding, also known as Bodas de Sangre in Spanish. And we did the English translation in community college, and it really changed me. It gave me an insight into what it means to speak my native tongue on stage. That was not something that I was ever looking for or aware that was kind of like a thing. I just liked acting, and it connected me to something much deeper. Um, so a couple of months ago, I thought, you know, I called Jackie Alexander, who's the artistic director of North Carolina Black Repertory Theater, who gave me my first shot creating something out of school. And I said, "Listen, man, I love this game, but I need to get back in the room and feel like an artist again. I need to get my hands dirty." And he connected me to this incredible artistic director named Melody Brooks at New Perspective Theater Company. And I had been talking with my partner Marina Piris about like, yo, we need to do a piece. Like we got such talented friends. Like we want to do this Hispanic work, Latin work. We want to like put it out there. We don't want to wait for breakdowns. We want to make breakdowns. And I thought, oh, Blood Wedding. That would be a perfect play to do because it's classical, it's Spanish, it's English. There's an English version, there's a Spanish version, and I thought if I take everything I learned from devised theater class and like really put all that stuff in the pot, I think we can make something really special. And Marina's an incredible musician and a writer, so she wrote, she started as soon as she started reading the play, she started writing music, and I went, all right, cool, there it is, that's it. And then we called up a bunch of our friends, they all said yes, and we've been developing the show. Um, for like 6, 7 months now, and really it's been such a passion project for me. I'm adapting the script now into a bilingual version, and, it's just been the ins and outs of like, what does it take to make a show in New York and not necessarily go by the book of like, it's a first it's a 29-hour reading, then it's a 1-week workshop, then it's a 2-week workshop, and this is how much money you need, and this is the code you're using. Trying to think a little bit outside the box of that, more into like the roots of theater that I was introduced to, you know, in school. The thing that is about like, all right, we're gonna like go rehearse this in a living room for 5 hours and go get a beer for 3 hours afterwards and talk about it, sort of thing. Like whatever that energy, that ruffian energy is the thing that I was looking for, and that we were all looking for and needed. And once we did our first three, we did a workshop of it in 3 days. We staged a 4-act play with original music and lighting design and books in hand. It was an official thing, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, we're presenting this to people. We were playing. We were actors who wanted to act, and this was the most considerable thing I directed up to that point, and it really showed me, oh, this is something that I can't, I don't even have a choice. This is what I do. I love to be in these kinds of rooms in this way. And then since then we've been off to the races, grant writing, raising money, putting it together, the proverbial Sondheim, like everything that Sondheim describes in Something in the Park with George, the beginning of Act Two, putting it together, playing the politician and raising money and how to make sure that you're giving an audience what they need, but holding to your vision, and putting your culture and who you are on the line and taking risks in order to tell a story bigger than what you're comfortable necessarily sometimes revealing about yourself, all of that. And if it wasn't for all of that nobody's paying me for, nobody asked me for, and no one actually cares until I care, I would not be in the position I am in the rest of my career right now, because that's my lifeline. That's my energy. That's my it's my passion, So yeah, Blood Wedding, man. That's what Bolas de Sangre. That is the project that I am really pushing forward right now, and I am a very lucky guy that I have an incredible team with me. People that are just so committed and spiritually involved in this process, and they reinforce my grit every day.
Man, that is incredible. Incredible. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks,
Proud of you,
brother.
bro. I love what you said, you know, nobody cares until you care.
Yeah,
I was actually in rehearsal
true.
today joking with the ASM of our production. because she was like, "What time did you wake up this morning?" And yesterday we talked about our wake up times, and I was like, "You know what time I woke up?" She was like, "5 a.m." I was like, "Yeah."
Mhm.
And, she was like, "Well, I got up at 6:30 to go to the gym." And I was like, "Yeah, I was up to go on a run." And she goes, "I'll race you." And, it's just like this playful banter. And I laughed. She's like, "What you laughing at?" She's like, "You don't think I can race?" I was like, "No, no, no, that's not what I was doing there." And she was like, "I believe in myself." And it was just a funny moment of like, yeah, like confidence really matters in this game.
Yeah,
Like
and you know what? I tend to think less about confidence and more about belief nowadays because I think my
Mm,
confidence, at least it used to come from a place of like, I'm faking it till I make it. I'm like, yeah, I can lead this Broadway show with a 30-piece orchestra and no rehearsal. Like, yeah, yeah, I got it. I can do it. I'm confident in that. But now I'm just starting to believe and I'm drawing the line for myself about what those 2 mean, and the more that I lean towards belief, the less I have to, like, convince myself that I am that I am where I need to be, and the more that I just believe that I am where I am, and it's cool, and it's fine, and nobody is, like the ceiling isn't falling off if this doesn't go the way it needs to go, or if I don't make that connection, or if I don't book that job, or not, or, if this play isn't the next thing off Broadway, whatever, it's like, nah, I just believe in the power that people as a conglomerate have when they focus on one goal and one thing, and they are just like, "All right, I'm in. I'm following this mission." And it's like, that has definitely changed my approach to commercial theater and, like, the television world, because now I feel myself in my tapes right here, I'm relaxed, my chakras are more aligned, my shoulders are a little lower, and I'm not having to, like, grip onto this idea that, like, "Yeah, I could do this thing. I could do this thing." I'm just like, I'm fine. I got the other stuff I like too. I can let her cook dinner tonight for my girlfriend. It's gonna be great. It's like
that's
nothing.
what's up. No, and it's funny because you hear anecdotes of actors who we really love and respect and whose career we want to have. And you hear these stories where they're like, "Yeah, I started doing really great when I stopped caring so much."
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, how can you stop caring? Like, it doesn't necessarily make as much sense to the ear at first because it's like, no, I care. Like, I care. And here's the thing: it's like I care about my show, well, as a Sunday more than anything. I am working on this like at all times of my life, but I don't care about the result. I care about the process being alive, and I care that my actors feel supported. I care that the producers I'm producing this with feel like they have a voice. I care that the music supervisor and the composers feel like their ideas are important as mine, you
Sure.
know? Like, that in the end gives you a better result. So why focus on the result when you can focus on the things that give you the result? And it tends to just make everything, like, lighter.
Mm. Now, as a theater maker, I have a question for you that just came up recently for me. You're the first guest I'm having the opportunity to ask this question to. I am currently facilitating a workshop for
Mhm,
students who are in secure and non-secure detention, meaning they are in the judicial system. They do not live at home with their families. They live in group homes. So these are kids they're in trouble. They're not in prison, right? So it's not they're in so much trouble that they're in prison, but they have been taken from their homes. They have to regularly meet with judges, and they go to a special school for students who are in the same kind of detention as they are.
mhm.
And these kids come from backgrounds, man, that like, because you can only imagine like what kind of a situation would a kid have to be in to like find themselves in this situation at 16 years old to begin with. 15 years old, 14, they're high schoolers. Um, and we're working on playwriting with them and working on playwriting with a social justice theme. And one of the kids asked me, he was like, "Why is acting important?" And I was like,
Let's drop some bars, homie.
right. I was like, "Ain't that a question?" So I gave him a response, but I'm curious to ask you, as somebody who is creating work from scratch, right? Because you take
Yeah,
another,
yeah.
it's one thing to be, you know, I feel like actors are primarily interpretive artists, right? We're
Sure,
handed a
sure,
script and we do our version of the script.
totally.
To be the playwright, to be the person who writes the book or the score or who directs the thing, to be on that creative end is like a whole extra step where you're saying, like, I believe in this so much that I'm gonna make it myself,
Yeah.
you know? And so I'm curious your perspective, like that kid's question, like, why is theater important? Why is the work that you're doing important right now?
What a beautiful question, brother. I'm so glad that you're doing that and that you're in a space and that they have someone like you that they can talk to. I find myself in a similar situation actually because I'm a teacher and I have my own studio where I have like 11 students right now that are like another huge lifeblood of my creativity working with these young artists. And one of them is going through this grief, this grief. And one of the things that we do in class is playwriting, right? Because number one, your acting teacher knows things about you. You remember this from school. Like they can look at you and go, "You're not here. You're not here." You can't lie to the theater folk.
Yeah.
There's something. There's a lizard brain that goes ding 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 when there's that one really talented student that's maybe not as present as they usually are. And what I found with this particular student is that playwriting is healing because you're taking your ideas from your head, from your subconscious, from this story that you tell yourself of why things are the way they are, and you're putting them towards something active and something with a narrative, which means beginning, middle, climax, end, right? Whatever you want to say. And it's like taking it out of your body and putting it towards something that you have dominion over, that you are constantly having to craft, that has characters that don't have your name, right? That has a storyline that may be similar to your life because we write what we know, but is removed from your life, like the great as if in acting, right? It is not currently your circumstance, but the stakes feel similar or the same or way different than your circumstance. And that drawing that bridge between an artist and form is healing as a person. Like at its best, it's healing as a person. It doesn't matter if you burn the script afterwards. I teach with kids in the Bronx, like after school, who are like from grade, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, right? And I teach Saturdays for like ensemble groups of Latino kids who are around the same age, and it's like both groups of like three groups of 30 kids, right? And the one thing that I have seen come time and time again is this idea of young people having to protect themselves, right? Like we have to be on the defensive, right? The streets aren't safe. I can't speak my language. I don't know what's going to happen or not happen with my parents. And as a theater artist, you in a position of power, you have to be like ready, willing, and open enough to hold everybody's reality and then do something with it. Like it can't just sit there. It's like juggling. It's like how do I juggle this next piece that you're throwing at me and somehow make it active, right? So I think that when we are in the positions we're in working with young artists that are in whatever circumstance they are in, actually, because it actually it matters and it doesn't, because everybody is flawed and everybody is going through something, and that's where we meet in the middle as people. And it's like what we get the chance to do and why theater is important is because it's how we heal. It's medicine, right? It's interactive community. It's being in process in front of people and making mistakes and failing and still being nice. Good, good, you did that.
Yeah.
To be or not to be, that is the question. That's right, you said it. Yeah, you did. You said it. You didn't know what you were saying at first, but now you have an idea. And it's crazy because, for me, Shakespeare is always my way. What I see, the ability of retention and emotional intelligence that is all it takes is you just being okay with silence for like 15 seconds. You just let someone think for 15 seconds and you tell them it's fine. Take your time. Don't worry. And they just go deeper and deeper into their subconscious. All of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, Hamlet's just afraid to die." I'm like, "Right. Why?" 15 seconds, 15 seconds. And whatever comes out is brilliance, because it's them and it's their interpretation. And I think that like that's why theater is important because we don't get that every day. We're just going to the next thing and doing the next that and the next party and the next thing, whatever it is, right? And or even as working actors, the next job, the next it's like it's really hard to stay present in a world that requires you to dissociate to be okay sometimes, you know?
Ooh, say
But
that.
it's possible, and I think that we are practitioners of that at our best, you
Yeah.
know?
Something else that, and also for the folks at home, I'm so sorry if you hear music in the background. My neighbors are blasting music in the
Welcome to
courtyard.
New York City.
I'm in New York City, so apology. We're gonna do our best in post to get it out, but
Nah,
just in case, I'm not being lazy.
leave it
It's
in.
just really loud.
Leave it in. They get the authentic experience.
um, what was I gonna say? Oh, so you just kind of like dropped this little thing that I think is interesting for us to hit on real quick, which is okay, you're doing this recurring. Is it a guest star on Your Friends and Neighbors?
It's a recurring, yeah.
Yeah, great. So you're recurring on this Apple TV show. You got this Law and Order spot. You're developing this play, and yet you're still like you're running your own studio. You're teaching
Mhm.
these kids in the Bronx. You've got
Yeah.
these this group of Latino students on Saturdays, and you're kind of building this like holistic creative lifestyle
Mhm.
that I'm observing, right? You've got the part where you're
Mhm.
being creative, you've got the part where it's, your commercial successes and pursuits, which we all have. And then you
Yeah.
also have the part of like giving back while finding ways to support yourself in between things. Um,
Totally.
that's not a question, but that's an observation. That's just something that like just kind of hit me listening to you talk about the importance of theater. I'm like, man, you're really building something. And as this, this show, the tagline, tools for the long game, like that's the kind of recipe for the people who are listening to the show. Like, that's a recipe for the long game. Like, Matthias, none of your eggs are all in the same basket, you know?
No, and people have been telling me, like, maybe I should choose a basket, and I get it. Yeah, I no, but I get it because, for some ways of seeing the world, we must choose. I get it, for a person that wears XYZ type of glasses, they must choose a route, and a lot of people do, and that's wonderful. I think for me, what I'm trying to craft for myself is, like, I gotta be okay being, like, if I'm not gonna choose a basket, I better be the best delegator on earth. I better be a very trustworthy leader. I better be a very communicative artist, right? So that when I can't adhere to all the things that I have systems in place that keep everybody fed continuously, like, whether that's artistically or monetarily, because, like, this is business too, So, like, I came to the point where, like, my acting studio has been something that I've been doing since I graduated from school, and I'm really proud of it. But I only had, like, 3 students, a year and a half ago. I got 11 now. It's changed, and I'm so grateful for that and for the growth and, like, the patience I had to have for that to become a reality. But I trusted the work and I liked what I was doing. But the thing is, when I'm on set for Your Friends and Neighbors, I can't teach you how to get into college. I got to be an actor right now, So the only way that I can do both of these holistically is to say, all right, now is my time to invest in another teacher that I got to pay for that they can
Mhm.
come in and do their talented thing with this incredible student that I'm just a part of the routine for this student. Right. It's like they see me on Thursdays. That's the thing. Like they go to dance class on Friday. So it's about trying to continuously create like momentum while not always having to be like 1 hour at a certain place because sometimes that's impossible. But I don't think that I want the kind of life that, you know, I'm gonna work this thing until I get that other job, and once I get that other job, I'm leaving this thing and I don't wanna do it anymore because I've always wanted this other thing. It's like, no, everything I'm doing right now, and I'm lucky to say this, everything I'm doing, I love. And I think is a part of my life. And then at some point when I have a theater company, we'll all be under the same umbrella. It'll be an educational department. It'll be a this, it'll be a that, it'll be what it is, right? And I know that that's my future. So I know that I'm building towards that. But everything, you for me not to choose a basket, I have to be incredibly careful that I only have 2 arms,
Yeah.
and
No, that's,
that's it.
I no, that hit home. I'm taking
Mhm.
that one with me because
Yeah.
we were talking before we started this recording, and it's like, there are days, this last month where I literally was like, Hassiem, you are doing too much, which is,
Right.
I never thought I'd ever say. I've always been somebody who was able to juggle things like really well. Um, and in some ways it's catching up. And so I appreciate what you said about like delegating, and what you didn't say, but what I caught on to was like, you're not choosing one thing. However, you are only doing one thing at a time. Like at a particular time, like, okay, cool, I'm wearing this hat. And while I'm wearing this hat, I'm not wearing that hat. And I'm gonna take
No.
this one off before I put this one on.
Yeah.
Um
And I'm gonna
now
go on a walk between hats.
and
Like, do
sometimes no
something nice
hats.
for myself. Just, like, go on a walk by the water and not work, and then that's when you get that great idea, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes no hats, guys. Take your hats off. Uh my final question for you, Matthias. As you know, because you listen to the show, I ask everybody on the show, what is the defining quality that you bring to the table as a storyteller? And the
Yeah.
first time I
Good
had you
question.
on, you said it was your energy, positive mindset, and your yes and attitude.
Hmm.
How you feel about that now?
I definitely feel like that's my foundation, it's interesting that you bring that up because that is I think those are my values, I think that those are my values and those have solidified for me, and those are the things that I can take responsibility over, and I think that they haven't changed. It's just that I'm using them in far different places than I once was, and now it's, like, sort of my job to be aware of how I approach circumstances, people, projects, like, when I'm directing my play, I get to flow and be this sort of, like, as the director, be the waterfall of energy that then the river starts to build itself, but I have to show up with a certain amount of, motivation and vision, but then be loose enough to allow it to just be shaped as I go in front of me, but still stay on the vision, right? But when I'm on set for Your Friends and Neighbors, which this is my first, like, major television show that I'm a part of, and to be joining a cast and a crew, just this team, like, at this level, they're all working at the tip top of their career, like, this was one of the most supportive and incredible, like, spaces to work that I've been a part of, and if we're doing that at that level, there is no excuse. If you can, like, Amanda Peet, I did a lot of, like, all of my work with Amanda on this. She's such a visionary actress, but she's also just, like, such an open person, that it made me forget that I'm like, "Oh, I'm on this big set right now with, like, John Hamm and Amanda Peet and Olivia Munn and James Marsden." I'm breathing the air with Jonathan Tropper. Like, no, it's like, no, I actually stopped being there, and it was just like, "Oh, so you do a lot of theater, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." We talk about this. "How are your kids?" And this, and then, "Okay, what are the lines there?" "Okay, go boom, boom, boom." And she would tell me, she's like, "Matthias, remember, you get as many as you want. You get as many takes as you want. Don't worry." And I'm like, "Right, thank you. Okay." So it's that kind of energy that makes me feel the most at home, whether I'm the one supplying it or whether I'm lucky enough to be the one that's the recipient of it. And I think that the great artists that we have an ability to see far beyond their own sort of ego and need to be right or liked in order to make someone else feel right and liked, like, to make someone
Yeah.
else feel like, "Oh, I'm good. I'm good here. That's good." And, like, that ripples in a cast, and I felt that in Friends and Neighbors, because I had to jump in with 2 feet to that show, and I did, and I felt supported doing it, from everybody there. Um, so yeah, I would say 100%, those are the values that I have, and I think now it's just about how am I employing those as an actor, as a teacher, as a director, and also, bro, like, I just went to Argentina for a week, like, get out, like, just go breathe some air, like, see your family, see somewhere new, eat some good food, go on a walk by the water when the sun's out, like, send that email in 20 minutes instead of right now, and like go do something nice. We it's such a hustle, and I have been hustling, but I am now understanding that for as hard as I want to hustle and work, I got to almost double that in my rest if I want to be performing at the top of my game, you know, especially if I'm trying to do all these different things at the same time. Because my bandwidth isn't just on like learn my lines, show up, have an action, remember the DP's name. It's like no, no, no. That is one thing plus the grant writing and being a director and talking to the artistic director and inviting everybody. And then oh yeah, Liliana's college audition for Ithaca is coming up next week. I got to make sure that I run her Shakespeare with her one more time and give her those notes. And then oh yeah, on Saturday I got to be here. It's what you're doing so eloquently in front of the city council, right? It's like we as artists don't have this like everyday structure of life. We create a world, and how we inhabit that world sort of like changes week to week. But we have all of these different pillars that at the end of the day create this creative life that we run into, you know? But
Absolutely.
it's a juggle.
To juggle, but also you spoke about having a foundation of values and those
Mhm.
pillars to your creative life. And I want the folks at home to like hold on to that, right? Like, yes, this creative life can be crazy and things are all over the place, but taking opportunities to rest, recognizing and acknowledging and identifying your values that you're building your career upon, super important because that's what's going to give you direction. And you know what? Like, I'm not surprised that your response from a couple years ago hadn't changed from that question because I can see in the consistency that you are building in your career that no, your values haven't changed. And I think that that's really special and really awesome for folks listening to the show to see. And, for the folks who heard the first conversation we had to now, like for them to see that no, yeah, like stick with it. The consistency, it pays off. And
Yeah.
Matthias, dude, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and catching us up on everything you've been up to. Sounds really awesome. I can't wait to see your play, man.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me again, and for continuing to hold this space for creatives to like have catharsis actually, because that's what this is for us. We have all of these questions and wonderments about what it is, and it makes us like track back our journey and be like, how did I get there? How did I get there? I just recently saw Merrily We Roll Along, the film version, on the plane on my way to Argentina. And I was like, it's like, how did you get to be here? What was the moment? I'm like, right. And you're telling me from this moment I had at Camelot, how did I get to be here? And that's what all of us are trying to figure out in this life, right? Like, how did we get here? What do we do? How do we keep going? What does it all mean? And I just think that working as an artist is a really beautifully worthy way of figuring that out.
100%. 100%. Matthias, man, you're the best. Let's catch up soon. Beyond
Do it
this.
again, brother.
This has been good.
Beyond this.
But like
A
on a
beer.
personal, yeah, yeah.
A beer.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Alrighty, folks, if you enjoyed this conversation with Matthias, then you'll definitely love the first conversation I had with Matthias back in 2024. So be sure to check that out. Thank you all so much for tapping into this episode of The Actor's Instrument. Major shout out to our co-producers and distributors over at Next Chapter Podcasts. Disclaimer, and for Matthias, I don't drink, but we're going to link up. We'll catch up. Alrighty, folks, we'll be back next Tuesday. Till next time, y'all. Peace.